Dereck Chisora versus Joseph Parker is looking likely to be a done deal. Now, I'm reading a report here off Michael Benson's Twitter page. I'm just going to read this for you now. He says, a deal for Joseph Parker versus Dereck Chisora is nearly there for October 26th at the O2 Arena in London, according to Parker. Okay? Says the New Zealander left his home country earlier today to start training camp in the US. So, Joseph Parker leaving New Zealand, start training camp in the US, would mean he has a fight. And it is, from this day, because I'm recording this, it's 11 o'clock at night, and it is August the 26th. We're 2 months away from October 26th. So, 2 month, 8 week training camp. Yeah, you would imagine that. So, I would imagine that this fight looks likely to happen next. I would be quite surprised if it didn't. One thing I'm noticing, especially in the comment section of this Twitter feed, a lot of people reckon this is going to be pay-per-view. I don't necessarily think it's a pay-per-view worthy fight in terms of the names. I mean, I know people know that Dereck Chisora is, he's a name to an extent, but is he a big enough name to sell a pay-per-view without the opponent being Dylan White, without the opponent being David Hay, without the opponent being, say, AJ? Probably not, especially at this stage in his career. Joseph Parker, he's known in the UK, obviously for the Hughie Fury fight, and obviously for the AJ fight, and definitely the Dylan White fight. Dylan White fight was great. So Joseph Parker, he's known in the UK, but neither of these guys necessarily have the biggest profile in the UK. Chisora will probably be more known than Parker. Seriously. Now, as I said, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Eddie Hearn put this on pay-per-view, because let's remember, he's put fights like Kell Brook versus Frankie Gavin on pay-per-view. I know, looking back in hindsight now, you could say, but it had Lee Selby versus whatever the guy's name was when he won the world title. It had AJ on it because AJ wasn't obviously as big back then. Still, you're talking about Frankie Gavin versus Kell Brook on pay-per-view, a mismatch. And the undercard, they weren't necessarily competitive fights on the undercard either. So, he's put on stinkers on pay-per-view before. He put on Cleverly versus Bellew, the rematch on pay-per-view. That was an absolute shit show. So, Eddie Hearn's done this before. Would I be surprised if he did it again? No, not really. I could easily see him putting this on pay-per-view. The one kind of thing I've noticed with Eddie Hearn as of late is he has been putting on better undercard fights on pay-per-views. As of late, anyway. Because if we look back at Dylan White versus, what was the guy's name? Rivas. We had Dave Allen versus David Price. We also had Dereck Chisora versus Arthur Spilka. Decent enough fights on paper. Obviously, both those fights weren't exactly competitive. But they were decent fights on paper, obviously, the main event. So, it's not been announced yet, this fight, and they always haven't announced it as a pay-per-view. I wouldn't be at all shocked if it was a pay-per-view. In terms of the fight, it's an interesting fight to me, because if you were talking about Dereck Chisora, the same Dereck Chisora who fought Carlos Takam, you would imagine that Joseph Parker would have no trouble with Chisora. Because although Chisora won that fight, he was losing that fight up until the knockdown, or up until the knockout. And if you watch that fight, you really can struggle to give Chisora a round in that fight, seriously. For the 8 rounds, he took a beating, and the referee was on the verge of stopping that fight a couple of times in Carlos Takam's favour, until obviously Chisora pulled that right hand out of nowhere and took Takam out. So Chisora back then, about a year ago, looked like he was there for the taking, and then obviously he was stopped by Dylan White. But since then, he's teamed up with Dave Caldwell, and I have to say, Chisora, he's looking like, a cat who is literally on his 9th life at this stage. He's looking very good. I'm seeing improvements there. I think I said it in my post-fight review for Chisora versus Spilka, that is it a case of too little too late? Are there too many miles on the clock for all this good stuff to, come to fruition? For all this, newfound technique, newfound punching power, newfound lease of life? Is it too late? I think it is. And I think that Joseph Parker, it won't be necessarily an easy fight for Joseph Parker. I don't think a fight with Dereck Chisora will ever be an easy fight, unless your name is Tyson Fury, or unless you're Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, someone like that. I don't think Chisora will give you an easy night. I don't expect him to give Parker an easy night, but I just think Parker's youth, his freshness, his speed, not necessarily his punching power, because I don't think Parker is a devastating puncher. I think if he sits down on the shots a bit more and maybe throws some more spite, there's maybe a little bit more power there. I do think Parker, he can be explosive, but I just don't think he's necessarily a devastating puncher. So I would imagine Joseph Parker would win this fight probably on points. But I definitely think I could see this fight being highly competitive. Highly competitive. And yeah, I wouldn't be against seeing this fight personally. I think it's a good fight. As I said, I would make Parker favourite, but having seen the way Chisora's looked lately, I would say 60-40 in Parker's favour. Because Chisora, if this was the Chisora of last year who fought Takam, I'd say probably about 80-20 in Parker's favour. Whereas Chisora now, he looks much better. But just, I think there's too many miles on the clock. That's my thoughts on this. Leave yours down below. Let me know what you think. Are you intrigued? Would you like to see this fight? And do you think Eddie Hearn will put this on pay-per-view? Personally, I don't think it should. But at the end of the day, I'm not in charge of Sky. I'm not in charge of, Matchroom, anything like that. So I don't know what goes on. I wouldn't be surprised if it was on pay-per-view. Don't think it should be. But let me know down below. Do you think it should be on pay-per-view? And would you be intrigued about this fight? Who do you think will win? Who do you have? Let me know down below. Love reading the comments. So leave it all down below. Hope you liked the video. If you did, please leave a like. Subscribe if you're new. And as always, I will talk to you after.